Hi, Angela Ray here. If it's Monday, it's time for the A Take. I call this one Left, White, and Right in honor of National African American History Month. If you have heard of Juliette Hampton Morgan, then please I ask you to bear with me. But if you have not, then this is a story definitely worth telling. Juliette Morgan was a white woman born in 1914 to a very wealthy family in Montgomery, Alabama. Her family knew famous authors and actresses of the time, and Juliette wanted for nothing. She became a public school teacher and a librarian. But an anxiety disorder kept her from driving, so she would take the bus to and from work. That's the bus in Montgomery, Alabama. She witnessed the inhumane way white bus drivers spoke to African American men and women, and she was moved to act. Juliette Morgan wrote the first of many letters to the local paper, the Montgomery Advertiser, decrying the way blacks were treated, calling segregation unchristian and wrong, demanding that her fellow white citizens do something about it. Well, she lost her job at the bookstore where she was working. And that letter, by the way, was written in 1939, 16 years before Montgomery would become famous for its bus boycott. Juliette's eyes were opened, and she was not going to stop her one-woman crusade. Bus drivers hated her as she would call out their abuse on the spot, making her no new friends, but a lot of new enemies. Yet she continued to write letters to the newspaper. As the years wore on and Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat in 1955, Juliette Morgan wrote a letter to the newspaper likening the growing movement to India's Mahatma Gandhi. Her job was now in jeopardy. She was bullied by other whites and threatened. At some point, she promised her employers she would stop writing letters. But when you're on a mission, it is hard to keep a promise like that. When she wrote to a friend who had confronted white bigotry himself, he asked if he could publish her letter, and she said yes, even though she had promised not to write any more letters. White people boycotted the library where she worked. She received obscene phone calls. A cross was burned in her yard. Overcome with anxiety and depression, she resigned her position at the library. The next morning, her mother went to her room to find Juliette dead of an overdose. She had written a letter that said, quote, "I am not going to cause any more trouble to anybody," end quote. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. recalled the influence Juliette Morgan had on him in one of his books, noting that she was the first person to draw a parallel between Gandhi's nonviolent civil disobedience and the civil rights movement in this country. Juliette Morgan never led a huge march or made a speech before thousands of people. No, she waged a one-woman war against her own people to get them to see that, yes, Black lives do really matter. I'm Angela Ray with today's A Take. I'll see you next time.